Hey there, and welcome to your 20th May edition of The Wrap. Simple news summaries for busy people. Brought to you by me, Verashni Pillay, and the rest of the Explained.co.za team. In today's wrap, we're looking at how you can get registered for the vaccines, Zuma's High Court hijinks, and the other big news you need to know from the week that was. So, let's dive straight in. Our take, Zuma and the Stalingrad tactic. If we had a rand for every time former President Jacob Zuma used a legal delaying tactic, we'd be, well, not rich exactly, but we could probably afford a pretty fancy generator to dodge those load shedding bouts in winter. As we've told you before, Zuma's decades old arms deal trial is about to kick off. We think, we hope. We're not sure because on Monday, when the trial was about to start and we really thought that the man was without options, his legal team pulled a rabbit out the hat. They want seasoned state prosecutor Billy Downer to recuse himself from actually prosecuting Zuma. We're waiting to see the actual special plea and motivation, but political analysts say that Zuma may claim that Downer is biased and has a political agenda. We know, right? This man has been on the case for 2 decades, so he is the best qualified person to do it. Now, most experts believe that this is yet another Stalingrad tactic by Zuma. This approach is named after the famous Soviet Union battle that wore down attacking German forces over 5 months. But the Soviet Union has nothing on Zuma, who has evaded prosecution with endless appeals to higher courts in this and other matters. Not to mention even becoming state president and ensuring those pesky charges first brought in 2005 were squashed. So, if the Pietermaritzburg High Court, where this case is being heard, turns down his request, which it's likely to do for various convincing legal reasons, he may appeal it all the way up to the highest court in the land, the Constitutional Court. Remember that this is his right. The system has to show he has been given a free trial, and there is a presumption of innocence before guilt. So unfortunately, he might actually get his way. But when the case does finally get going after all these appeals, it'll dominate news headlines. The arms deal is nearly as old as our democracy, and its sins have haunted us for decades. In the 90s, the new ANC-led government acquired military arms we did not need with billions of rands we could not afford. From this deal, thousands of rands in bribes from French arms manufacturer Thales were paid to high-ranking ANC politicians, including Zuma, through his then financial advisor, Schabir Shaik. Thales and Zuma are now in court facing charges of corruption, fraud, racketeering, and money laundering. But recent history has shown that the Zondo Commission, at least, was wise to Zuma's delaying tactics and went straight to the Concord itself when he looked like he was getting up to his old tricks. Hopefully, something similar can happen this time to speed things up. It's been 20 years, guys. We're tired. Pansy Zuma delays pansy. On to the big story. Phase 2 of the vaccine rollout kicks off. South Africans over the age of 60 are showing off their first shot of the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine, and we're here for it. It's such a relief that phase 2 of the vaccine's rollout strategy is finally kicking off, and it's aimed at our senior citizens. And it's going much faster than the first phase, which was still a trial and had more checks in place, which slowed things down. But still, the second phase does have challenges. At the start of the week, elderly people were queuing in queues at only 87 public health sites. This is far short of the 3,000 sites government hoped to have up by phase 2. We have to play our part too. The initial turnout has been slow. Of the 5 million citizens older than 60, only 1.2 million citizens have actually registered. Talk to your parents and grandparents, folks, and get them on board. Meanwhile, phase 1B of the Sisonke trial is running concurrently with phase 2. Under the first part of phase 1, stay with us, a lot of ones here, about 500,000 healthcare workers were vaccinated. That ended on 15th May, just this past week. And now phase 1B, the second part of phase 1, is kicking off. And that is for the remaining 750,000 healthcare workers in the country. So we have the last part of phase 1 running and phase 2, which in its totality targets about 16 million people, including essential workers, people living in crowded areas, and people over the age of 40. So if you're over the age of 40, you'll be able to register very soon. But this all means that we're going to need a whole lot more vaccines. We've secured about 6 million Pfizer vaccines due to come in batches with plans to vaccinate 250,000 people a day in the coming weeks. Let's hope we can actually do that. Things have to speed up sooner rather than later, especially as the third wave looms. On Wednesday, more than 3,000 new cases were reported in South Africa. Gauteng Premier David Makura said last week that this province, Gauteng, is officially in the third wave, while the Free State and Western Cape are on high alert as a resurgence begins. Experts are particularly concerned about the intensity of the third wave compared to the first and second wave, so brace yourself. We might see some new restrictions shortly. And that's just really a big hint to go out and buy some alcohol in case that gets shut down again. Moving on to your briefs, South African actress makes it big. A 29-year-old actress from KZN has Oprah Winfrey singing her praises. Tuso Mbedu has wowed audiences with her performance as Cora Randall in Amazon Prime series The Underground Railroad, based on Colson Whitehead's Pulitzer Prize-winning novel about slavery in the U.S. Mbedu worked her way up in the local acting scene right here in South Africa on shows like Mzansi Magic Saints and Sinners, plus Isibaya and Scandal, amongst others. In 2015, she landed a leading role in the award-winning Isitunzi drama series here in South Africa. She was nominated twice at the International Emmys in 2017 and 2018 for her role as Winnie in Isitunzi. And while she was in the US for the award ceremony, her agent encouraged her to audition for The Underground Railroad. Now, you'd think an outsider with no international experience would not stand a chance, but Mbedu wowed director Barry Jenkins. Now she's set to feature in yet another big series to be shot right here in South Africa, The Woman King, starring Oscar award-winning actresses Viola Davis plus Lupita Nyong'o. So she's playing with the big dogs now. As Trevor Noah puts it, she's living the ultimate dream. She made it big in the US and got people to come back to South Africa with her to make another show, thus scoring herself a round-trip ticket. Ha ha, Trevor. On to some wildlife news. If you've petted lion cubs, you hopefully know that it's a very contentious activity. Now, authorities want the country to move away from captive breeding operations generally and instead manage animals more efficiently in game reserves. Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment, Barbara Creasy, said as much when she released a long-awaited report on this issue earlier this month. Now, the report is 582 pages and it was put together by a 25-member panel, which she appointed in 2019 to review all policies around the management, breeding, hunting, and trade of animals like lions, rhinos, leopards, and elephants. Now, government wants to stop granting permits to breed, keep, hunt, or interact with lions in captivity, and it will revoke current breeding permits. As you can imagine, that's been greeted with a huge uproar. Sorry, that was a very silly pun, but we had to do it, from the private breeding industries. Meanwhile, some conservationists think that the recommendations, in fact, don't go far enough, saying leopards, for instance, will continue being hunted despite their dangerously low numbers. Now, this is a pretty big issue for South Africa and our breeding sector. So we've rounded up the for and against for the rules on our site, along with what we think about all of this. You can go to explain.coza and scroll down to the explainer section and you'll see a picture of a lion and you can read about it there. On to international news. Will Israel face sanctions? As we write, Israel shows no signs of letting up its offensive on Palestinian territory Gaza, where already 230 people have been killed in these latest attacks. U.S. President Joe Biden told Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Wednesday that he expected a significant de-escalation today on the path to a ceasefire. But Netanyahu has said he was determined to continue bombarding Gaza until Israel's aims is met. Al Jazeera is reporting. Meanwhile, though, it seems the global tide may be slowly turning against Israel. There's been marches and petitions from various countries demanding a ceasefire. Perhaps more importantly, some companies may be starting to hit Israel where it hurts, in the pocket. The Financial Times reported that in Norway, the world's largest sovereign wealth fund had excluded 2 Israeli companies for constructing and letting out buildings in Israel's settlements in the occupied West Bank. That means they've been targeted just for building in this contested territory. Here at home, of course, activists have called for President Cyril Ramaphosa, who said in an interview with Francis 24 this week that Israel's actions should be compared to apartheid. They've called on him to impose sanctions and end trade with Israel. Now, we import about 3.4 billion rand worth of Israeli goods and services each year, including computer software, chemicals, and electrical items. The U.S., despite Biden's call to Netanyahu, remains a staunch Israeli ally. Biden's administration has approved the potential sale of $35 million in precision-guided weapons to Israel. But despite that ongoing support, things are starting to crack, and it looks like there's more pressure on Israel to start behaving more humanely to its neighbors. Staying with international news is Bill Gates who he says he is. Microsoft founder and billionaire Bill Gates and his wife Melinda Gates recently announced that they would be divorcing, saying they could no longer grow together. Now, we reported and told you guys about it, and we thought it was quite a shame to see such a power couple split up. But now we're questioning everything we thought we knew about Bill Gates after a New York Times expose this week alleged that he pursued a number of women who worked for him and created an uncomfortable working environment. His conduct at work-related meetings was also questioned after he asked one of his women employees out for dinner. His office has denied the allegations of mistreatment of employees. A representative of Bill Gates also confirmed that the mogul had an affair with a staffer about 20 years ago. Now, Gates was married to Melinda for 27 years. Previous reports noted that Gates also met with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein on several occasions, which made Melinda uncomfortable. Bill, a little word of advice: no matter how much money you have, that kind of behavior is not okay. And it's capitalism over culture for Amazon. Amazon, the global retail behemoth, is planning to convert the River Club development site in Cape Town into its Africa head offices. The problem? The site is considered sacred by some Khoisan communities. Legal battles are now underway to stop Amazon from paving paradise to put up a parking lot. The Observatory Civic Association, the OCA, is an NPO in the Observatory region and has written to Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos but received no reply. You and the rest of Amazon's workers, OCA, at least you guys don't have to pee in bottles like some of their warehouse workers in the US who only get one bathroom break per shift and impossible targets to meet. But the OCA has even tried writing to Mackenzie Scott, who is Bezos' ex-wife, to convince him to not go ahead with the plans. They might have better luck there. Scott became one of the richest women in the world when she left Bezos and has made it her mission to give away his money. Meanwhile, we've got questions for the city of Cape Town. It has a history of being a little too welcoming to private property developers at the expense of the poor and vulnerable. There was the controversial evictions in Bromhoff Street, Woodstock, plus the ongoing gentrification in areas like Boerkaap. Booming property prices have pushed up rates in Boerkaap, forcing out the historic Cape Malay population who cannot afford them. Property development company Liesberg Leisure Properties Trust said that it's important that the Amazon offices are built, saying several thousand jobs are on the line, but we think there has to be a better way. On to some lifestyle news. If you're tired, we are too. If you're feeling fatigued lately and maybe even experiencing some low-key dread, experts say that it's thanks to the events of 2020. Psychologists are saying it's pretty normal for us to feel this way. It was a torrid year, but now things are getting kind of back to normal, meaning it's time to flourish. We love this idea. It came from a recent article in the New York Times, the tips on how to do just that, flourish. Here's a few of our favorite tips. Firstly, renew your relationships. Call a friend, meet up for lunch, have a good laugh, and talk about all the things that happened in the past year. Catharsis heals and connection is really life-giving. Secondly, practice gratitude. Numerous studies have shown that keeping a gratitude journal is a game changer for your mindset. Thirdly, reward yourself. It was hard at times to do the bare minimum, but as you get into the groove of things, notice your little achievements and milestones. It can be as simple as cooking a nice meal or finally cleaning out that closet you've been avoiding. Also, find new interests. We don't blame you if you got bored of all the puzzles and painting and bread baking that you took up when lockdown started, so try something new if you want. And lastly, do good. Find communities where you can volunteer or set up your own volunteer program. The act of giving gives us greater purpose and fulfillment. On to our newish section, Adulting 101, we're looking at the cost of electricity, vaccination sites, and the City of Johannesburg's new debt rehabilitation program. On electricity, the COGA, which is the City of Joburg, has scrapped its ridiculous planned charge for prepaid electricity customers after a public outcry. Go team! Had the COJ gone ahead with its plans, as of 1st of July, as a prepaid electricity customer, you would have had to pay 200 Rand extra for your household and 400 Rand for your business, no matter what your usage was. So thank goodness that was scrapped. But if you're not a prepaid electricity user, expect a 14.59 electricity tariff hike for Joburg residents that will kick in on 1st of July if the proposal is approved. This really sucks. Electricity prices are already horrifically high in the City of Joburg. On to some more City of Joburg news. If you've racked up a big municipal account, the city has revamped its existing debt rehabilitation program to help people out during COVID. You could qualify for up to 50% off your existing debt. This includes electricity tariffs that you might have accumulated before December 2020. You have until the end of July to apply. The new policy has increased the qualifying property value from 600,000 Rand to 1.5 million Rand. So that means a lot of you who own property in the city of Joburg might qualify. How much you get off your debt depends on what you earn. So check out, just Google COJ debt rehabilitation and you'll find the link to apply. Lastly, on your Adulting 101 for this week, if you're wondering how the government's electronic vaccination system will work, it's called the EVDS, and it's a little confusing. So we loved that there was an explainer about it from the health journalist at Bakisisa. We'll drop a link to it below this podcast. But in a nutshell, if you haven't registered already, go to EVDS. You can Google that as well. Wait and pray for your SMS that says you can come through, and then go to your allocated site with the unique vaccination voucher you'd be sent via SMS along with your ID and medical aid details. And look, there's going to be more and more sites being rolled out, and already there's several sites, about 50 that are split up between Discom and Clicks. So there will be a site in your area. Lastly, it's time for our accountability monitor. Now, remember the drama over that dodgy contractor who was in charge of our social grants in 2018? It was called CPS, Cash Paymaster Services. Now, if you don't remember it, don't worry. There's so many scandals and so little time. But here's what you need to know. Then Minister of Social Development and ANC's Women's League President Batabile Dlamini was ordered to personally pay 20% of the legal costs of Black Sash and Freedom Under Law, who successfully dragged her to court over the entire fiasco. Naturally, Dlamini did no such thing, pleading poverty. Now she's finally paid the 65,000 Rand owed to those organizations. Back in 2018, that landmark judgment making a personal cost order against Batabile was the first of its kind, and it held leaders personally accountable for wrongdoing. It's also created a welcome precedent. Since then, judges have repeatedly made personal cost orders against government leaders acting recklessly. It's important because otherwise we as taxpayers are essentially footing the bill when they lose cases and have to pay the other party's costs. Well, that's it from us at The Wrap, a product of Explained.co.za. Simple news summaries for busy people. Remember to share the love. Tell your friends to sign up for the updates at explained.co.za/subscribe. Till next time, goodbye from the team.